our environment, nothing is as central as our area of water. But our access to clean and reliable water resources is in danger. Due to declining revenues, as we've seen changes in our oil and gas and coal development, and as we've seen changes in our residential assessed valuations, we're concerned over our budget for the future. This has also been impacted by fires, demands of downstream consumers, including cities on the Front Range and states like Nevada, California, and Arizona. Our waterways have never been more overtaxed and underprotected. The last 20 years have been really tough on the Colorado River Basin. That's why this group is here today, to strongly urge the voters of the Western Slope to vote yes on ballot question 7A, which would give the Colorado River District the resources it needs to ensure that we have clean drinking water, access to healthy waterways for agriculture and irrigation, and to conserve this resource that's so central to our way of life. The Colorado River District needs additional support to continue to properly serve residents and to conserve our Western Slope water, which voters can provide by voting yes on 7A. Access to water is a make or break issue for Western Colorado families and residents. And question A is the best way to protect the future in our communities. As I said, my name is David Merrit. I represent Garfield County, and 7A is important because it provides the resources to Western Colorado to do what needs to be done for water resources in the future. And now I'm going to pass this off to Chris Treese.
Thanks, Dave. Interestingly, I just realized that it was this week, a year ago, that I retired from the River District. Oh. And prior to that retirement, I was 28 years of personally rewarding service to the River District. And my new signature line on my email says, retired water professional, enduring water geek. And I'm guilty. I am an enduring water geek. I'm committed to the importance of water in Western Colorado and committed to water in the Western Slope and committed to the River District's future and success in protecting that water. The River District is no stranger to the challenges that it's facing. For 80 plus years, the River District has litigated, it has fought in Denver and in DC and in engineering roundtables and community roundtables and interstate forums to protect and develop Western Slope water for the Western Slope. Today, however, the River District faces a challenge that is not of its making and one that it can't face alone. It needs our help, and that's the perfect storm of a budget crisis that Dave described. Declining revenues because of declining activity and prices in the energy industry, as well as the combined effects of Gallagher and Tabor from the Constitution, mean that the River District has a declining real source of revenues. And they need an increase. They're asking in November for that increase. They're asking for that increase so that they can continue to fight for Western Colorado water and the importance of that water, and to expand their partnerships in working on those with those fights. The core mission of the River District is bringing the West Slope together to recognize and protect the West Slope waters for West Slope uses. And 7A is that request for an increase in a mill levy of 1/4 of a single mill to continue that fight and to expand that fight with an expanded partnership program with a majority of the funds that would come in from this mill levy increase when approved in November. I look forward to questions when we get to them. And Brad or Dave, who do I hand off to?
Let's go to T. Wright, if that would be okay.
Certainly. And Chris, I thought that tagline was going to say water banker or water biker. I'm T. Wright Dickinson. My family We own and operate a commercial cow calf operation up here in the Three Corners in northwestern Moffat County. I had the pleasure of serving as Moffat County's representative to the River District Board for 9 years back in the 90s and the aughts. I'm endorsing and supporting the passage of 7A. I learned a lot. Chris was a young man when I joined the River District Board, as well as Dave was on the staff. And it was a very eye-opening experience to me to get a look into how the entities that we deal with downriver and across the divide in Colorado, how well funded and how those the peoples in those areas have both invested in their infrastructure as well as the entities that represent them in water. And it's very important to me, both from an agricultural person as well as a person who has both served as a county commissioner and chairman of Club 20, that we have a strong voice in our representation of water issues. The River District has long led that and stood in that stead for us. And it's important that they continue there. And I believe that the measure that the River District Board has put before the voters is appropriate, and I very much would like to see passage of that in November. Thank you.
Thank you, T. Wright. I think it would be appropriate right now to go to another one of our partners. We're lucky enough to have Matt Reece on with American Rivers to talk about obviously some of the recreational benefits and some of the perspective from his point of view and his organization's point of view. Matt is the director of the Colorado Basin. So Matt, would you feel free to kind of give us some insight, please?
Sure. Thanks, Brad. It's good to see everybody today. I'm Matt Reece. I'm the Colorado River Basin Director for American Rivers. We're a river conservation organization. Our mission is to protect and restore rivers for the environment and for people and for agriculture and for communities. We strongly support 7A. The Colorado River's never been more at risk than it is now. 20 years of drought, demand pressure from cities outside the basin, water speculators that we've all read stories about recently, demand from other states within the basin. All of this puts the West Slope way of life, our economies, our communities at risk. We need a strong river district more than anything right now. And now is absolutely the time to invest in the river district. We need to invest in our rivers. We need to invest in protecting agriculture. We need to invest in protecting recreation. Recreation is an incredibly important economic resource on the West Slope, including in the Yampa, White, and Green basins. I'll let Molly talk a little bit more about that, but it drives a very significant economy. And this is a critically important issue, and I think that's evidenced by the diversity of people that are coming together to support 7A. We have conservationists standing next to ranchers, standing next to water providers to get this done. It's never, ever been more important. So I encourage everybody to support and vote for 7A in November.
With that, I would lean over to my friend Molly Mugglestone with Business for Water. Molly, you've got some great information. Would you mind sharing that with the group really quickly?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Molly Mugglestone. I'm the Director of Communications and Colorado Policy for Business for Water Stewardship. We work with a lot of you. It's great to see everybody. And I will go a little bit more into some of those numbers that Matt just mentioned. We do work with businesses across the state and across the Colorado River Basin to protect our watersheds, our rivers, because they really do contribute to our economies. From every spectrum, from corporate down to the outfitter down the street. And so we really find that 7A and the Colorado River District and the work that they do, the projects that they're looking at funding across the spectrum to preserve agriculture, to protect healthy rivers and do river restoration projects across the board. We support 7A because we think it's critical for the communities and the economies of the West Slope. We did just release a study a couple of months ago that looks specifically at river-related recreation. And across the state of Colorado, river-related recreation is bringing in about $19 billion in economic output from people recreating on or near rivers and waterways and streams. And then the Yampa, we divided that study into the 9 basins that the Colorado Water Conservation Board uses to look at our state. And so the Yampa, White, and Green River Basin, it's almost $425 million contributed to the economy in that area, with over 500,000 individuals participating in that kind of recreation. So that's just one area of the economy that is impacted by healthy rivers and access to irrigation, to water for irrigation as well. We also work with corporations to bring corporate dollars to the table. And that's why we're also really supportive of the Colorado River District and 7A, because we see this as a partnership. No one entity is going to be able to do what we need to do for our rivers. And so we bring corporates to the table, and 7A and the Colorado River District is working on bringing other resources, and this mill levy will bring the resources needed that we can leverage together along with the state of Colorado to make these projects happen. And without that, I think what we're looking at is a severe limitation in what we can do for our rivers. We've seen that the state of Colorado is in a budget crisis, and we aren't going to get the funding that we need to really be able to produce what we need for our rivers from the state. And I think 7A is extremely important for the entire West Slope. So I'll end there.
Thank you very much for that, Molly. I think, it brings it home to show that this diverse group, many of them would tell you that out of all the initiatives and measures you're going to see on this November's ballot, that 7A is probably the most important from a perspective of a Western Colorado citizen, and then why this diverse group is coming together to support this. But I think our next speaker probably brings that together as well as anybody else. Our executive director of Club 20, Christian Reece, who is no stranger to advocating for specific needs for Western Colorado residents and businesses and her members. I think really will be able to bring this home to us. So Christian, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you, and I apologize for Zooming in the vehicle. I am pulled over and I am not driving and Zooming in between meetings. So thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this effort. We all know that water is a fundamental and indispensable resource to have vibrant communities and healthy economies. Water anchors the assets that makes Colorado unique and provides for our competitive advantages. It's vital to the Western Slope way of life. As a nonpartisan organization tasked with representing Western Colorado, Club 20's roots have been nourished by Western Slope water for nearly 7 decades. During this time, we have witnessed numerous attempts to divert or curtail West Slope water, and we've worked diligently with our partners at the Colorado River District to ensure that West Slope water stays on the West Slope. We are excited to be able to be here today to lend our support for ballot measure 7A, a measure that will enable the Colorado River District to continue to prioritize productive agriculture, infrastructure, healthy rivers, watershed health, and water quality conservation and efficiency. This measure will allow the River District to have additional resources to fight for West Slope water, protect agriculture, and protect sustainable drinking supplies in West Slope communities. With state funds increasingly under pressure because of the state's budget problems and inherent variability in severance tax revenues, Club 20 supports establishing adequate, stable funding sources to support and maintain the protection and preservation of Western Colorado water. And as you can see here today, water is not a partisan issue, it's an urban-rural issue. The demand for water is the greatest where the population is most dense, but the supply is here in the rural parts of our state. We must balance the increasing demands of the Front Range with the economic, environmental, and agricultural prosperity that water brings to our region. Simply put, water is the lifeblood of Western Colorado, and we must fight to protect it. So we're asking you here today to help us preserve the future prosperity of our region and vote yes on 7A.
Christian, thank you very much. I appreciate that. At this point, obviously, if any members of the group, we've got a couple of folks on with the media. Dennis, if you've got any questions specifically or anybody else does, any of our speakers would like to be available to answer any questions at this time. If for any reason you've got questions later, we're also available down the road. I would point out to anybody on the call right now, you can also go to the website at yeson7a.org. That's yeson7a.org to find out more information about the campaign, how to get involved, and or any information about the initiative itself. So we open this up for the next couple of minutes. If anybody's got any questions, this would be the time to ask them. Also, don't forget to unmute yourselves if you do have any questions. That'll make it easier to answer them.
This is Dennis. Can I jump in? I think Andy Mueller had talked about, excuse me, I'm trying to plug my computer in as I talk. I think Andy had talked about, it's obviously a pretty low cost tax when you come to a residential property. Maybe address when you get to the business side of things, is there a way to kind of frame how much this will cost for?
Yeah, I'll take that on. Yeah, for business owners, we know that they are taxed at 29% of assessed valuation. And for the business, this would be $7.70 per 100,000 of assessed valuation.
Yeah, the important piece is that that's the difference between residential and non-residential or residential and commercial is dictated by the state constitution. The River District isn't differentiating in its mill levy or its assessment on different types of property.
Anything else?
What about, can you talk about, I believe you've been going around to various county commissions to seek support. Where do things stand with the Mesa County Commissioners?
I can answer that one specifically right now. They haven't taken an official position. They have met previously because they have regular annual updates with the River District. So I know they've met with Andy previously. I know they've heard from members of the committee, the Friends of the Colorado River District, but I don't know that at this point they've taken official position at all. I know they've all expressed interest individually and understand obviously the water is important, but they have taken no official position that I'm aware of. Dennis.
Garfield County has. Last week, they passed a resolution in support of this measure.
And Delta County also did last week.
Yep.
And Summit passed it last week. And I believe that Eagle County is in the throes of passage as we speak.
Is there any organized opposition to this measure that anybody's aware of?
There is not, we're not aware of any.
Dennis, everyone loves this.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I have been on the at the same table sometimes, but on the same side of the table. And this is a partnership that brings in all aspects of water, recognizing that everything is needed for support for Western Colorado.
Dave, are you surprised or pretty pleased with the kind of broad-based?
I'm pleased. I'm not surprised because this is we've framed this measure to be able to provide support as we go down the road, both for the direct development water resource needs, but also recognizing that stream health, watershed health, recreation uses are very important to the users in Western Colorado. And you need to recognize all those issues. And, I've done that through my career as, in trying to develop water resource projects, recognizing that you've got to have a protection of all those benefits, or you won't get support.
Again, recognizing this isn't a very large tax for homeowners, it's still, you're asking for a tax in the middle of an
Yes.
economic downturn. I wonder if anybody can speak to that.
Yeah, this is an increase in a tough time, but the board thought long and hard on this. We discussed it over a number of board meetings and whether to go ahead at this point. And it was decided that we really needed to proceed at this time with this. We're, the state, we have the Gallagher essentially adjustment going on in the ballot. We don't know whether or not that will pass, but had the state not stepped in with a 7.15% on the state legislature for the residential assessment ratio, River District could have been seeing a very heavy drop in our budget just this year. So this is needed at this time. Hopefully the voters will recognize that, the Western Colorado needs to be able to bring resources to the table of our own if we want to get anything done. The days of the big federal money, are gone. The days of the state money, in many cases, are gone. We need to be able to do it ourselves and build a partnership with other entities that can help us.
This isn't something new that the River District has been facing. I mean, it's been, we've recognized what Tabor and Gallagher have been doing to us, and the energy industry downturn isn't yesterday's news. It's been out there for a few years now. So this has been under discussion. And frankly, the discussion when I was there is no good time for a ballot question of this type. Nobody wants to see the tax increase. So our job is to say, yeah, we acknowledge that there's no good time, but the water is an important enough resource. It's a critical resource that now is the time, because tomorrow may be too late.
Well, and if I could add to that a little bit, it's been rewarding to participate in these roundtables, and I was fortunate enough to be appointed by 3 different governors to serve on the Inerbasin Compact Committee, and that conversation that we've had, and the way that the River District Board has structured this question to bring those resources forward in the manner that can help even better unite the interests on the West Slope, I believe is the right path and direction, and why I support this.
I've probably got a couple more questions, but I don't know if there's another media rep that is on the line or not. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Who is our
Go on, Dave.
365 caller?
Okay. Can anybody speak to kind of how this proposal would kind of interplays with the state water plan execution? Or maybe lack thereof if there's not much funding for it?
Well, this allows the River District to bring resources to the table for the identified projects within Western Colorado where we can assist with the state water plan. The state water plan, the funding for that, will come. Some of it will come from the the new sports gambling tax. We'll see how much actually comes to pass from that. I think a lot of the funding for the state water plan is in jeopardy with the budget issues and with the decline in severance tax revenues. This allows us, where we can identify critical projects in Western Colorado, to bring that seed money to the table to get things going. We will be, we have worked for the past 15 years very closely with the Basin Roundtables and with the IBCC. We'll continue to do so and implement the priorities identified in the state water plan for Western Colorado. Give some resources to do that.
How do you see this kind of tying in with the whole demand management discussion? It sounds like I don't understand if the River District at this point is necessarily entirely on board with that.
Well,
If you end up on board, do you end up maybe using some of this to help fund some of that?
We're still looking at the demand management, but one of the things that was very adamant with the board is that this fund will not be used to fallow lands. The River District is in the business of supporting water use, whether it be consumptive or non-consumptive in Western Colorado. And the board wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be using these funds to retire in fallow lands. We'll still be looking at how that can be implemented, should it be implemented, and what are the benefits to Western Colorado. But the key point there on any demand management is it has to be compensated, voluntary, and proportional. So anybody who needs to benefit from it needs to be involved with it.
Can any of you speak at all to what happens next if this measure doesn't pass for the River District?
Andy sits down and looks at the budget real severely.
Well, I'm sorry, what?
Andy sits down and looks at the budget very, and looks at what's going to, we'll look at this, we'll look at it's Amendment B, right? On the ballot for the Gallagher. We'll be looking at both of those and what are immediate impacts to our budget, and then what are the long-term issues that we have. Because we've been looking at, and since Andy came on board 2.5 years ago, looking at a line where the anticipated revenues does not match the needed expenditures, and we'll have to reduce. If the revenues don't go up, the expenditures have to go down.
In short, if it doesn't pass, the answer is there have to be cuts. There are no choices. And it threatens the core mission of the River District. Anything that might have been excess or fat or discretionary has already been cut from the budget. The budget's been cut.
You left, Chris.
Sorry?
Yeah, right. You left last year.
15%. The River District cut the budget 15%. So anything further the River District's going to feel, and the concern is that Western Colorado is going to feel the core mission will be compromised.
Well, one of the big issues we're going into and assisting the state and the Upper Colorado Commission in the next 6 years is the renegotiation of the interim operating criteria for Lake Powell and Lake Mead. How much water gets balanced between Powell and Mead into the future. The interim operating criteria, which were negotiated and signed in 2007, essentially resulted over the past 13 years in approximately 9 million acre feet per year being delivered to the lower basin over that time frame, as opposed to the obligation of 8.23. These interim operating criteria expire in 2027. We are going to be starting those negotiations with those immediately. The Bureau just completed, or is in the process of completing, an assessment of how those operated over the last 13 years as we go into this negotiation. So in terms of protecting Western Colorado uses and Colorado's uses for the future, that's going to be very important. How much do we overdraw Lake Powell to send water down to Lake Mead? You probably saw the issues that came out last year when the senior staff at the Salt River Project and Southern Arizona Project talked about the sweet spot. If they kept Lake Mead just in its low enough level, they could continually draw more water out of Lake Powell, force more out. Those issues, I was surprised that they mentioned that in a public meeting, but they did. And those are very real issues. We need to be able to, to fight that, to make sure that we don't see any impact on our uses in the future.
Just talked about the counties that have endorsed this or were pursuing endorsement. There's some counties you left out. I assume you're pursuing endorsements from every county at this point.
Brad, you're talking about the endorsement
from
from
every
counties?
county. Yes, I'm not sure I heard all of your question.
Yes.
You ran through a number of counties that you're at various levels of getting or have gotten or pursuing endorsements. I assume like Southwest Colorado, for example, I didn't hear much mention of it, but I assume you're going to.
Well, they aren't in the River District.
So, excuse me, not Montrose.
Montrose and Ouray are. I think Montrose is scheduled to hear this soon, aren't they, Brad?
Yeah, they're in process right now. We'll obviously be having meetings that the committee and the campaign have been sharing information, and they'll be asking at least for information, if not full resolutions of support from many of the districts and many of the counties involved. Dennis, that list of endorsements, I know it's not complete right now, but on the website, it will continue to be updated as the campaign proceeds as well.
No county in the district has said no to endorsement at this point.
No one yet, no.
No. We have talked to some municipalities that actually have had a standing policy of not endorsing other entities' tax measures unless they are directly affecting them, such as maybe if it was a tax measure for a fire district, it was in that county or municipality, they would take exception to that. But they have a very strong, very strong policy of, that's your battle, you fight it, and we'll fight our own battle. But the counties, we're very close to. All the board members are appointed by the county commissioners from each of the 15 counties.
Kind of running out of questions. You guys want to add anything?
Well, we're always able to make individuals available
Yeah.
for more questions if you have them down the road, Dennis. We just appreciate your time.
Yeah, I should mention I've got several things I'm juggling today, so I'll be tomorrow before I can write this.
Okay.
Well, thanks for your time, Dennis.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I was
Yes,
trying to
indeed.
get right up to your ribbon earlier, but I realized I was muted. So probably good you didn't hear my cussing. So
I dropped off there.
I did.
Okay. All right. Well, if that rounds out this Zoom session for our event, thank you everybody for being involved. Really appreciate your time, your input, and looking to make sure that this all comes together. So thank you guys very much. And we'll see you as the campaign goes forward. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Likewise.